Hey everyone, welcome. Today we're going to crack open one of the most important documents a country puts out every year, the government budget. Think of it as the nation's wallet. We're going to peek inside and see exactly where all the money comes from, where it's all going, and, what that actually means for all of us and the economy. So let's get right into it.
Have you ever really thought about it? How does a whole country manage its money? It's a massive question, isn't it? And the answer affects pretty much everything. The roads you drive on, the schools in your neighborhood, even the taxes that come out of your paycheck. Understanding the basics here is really the key to figuring out how the whole system works.
All right, here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll cover what the budget actually is. Then we'll look at the two big buckets, revenue and capital. We'll see where the money comes in from and then where it all goes. After that, we'll figure out if it's a surplus or a deficit. And we'll wrap up with why deficits are such a big deal. Simple as that.
Okay, so Section 1, the nation's financial plan. Let's start with the absolute basics. What even is a budget? Well, the first thing to get is that it's not just some boring record of what was spent last year. No, it's a plan for the future. It's the government laying out its game plan and its priorities for the entire year to come.
And here's the official definition. It's an annual financial statement. And the most important word on this entire slide? Estimated. See, a budget is basically a giant, detailed forecast. It's the government's best guess at all the money it expects to bring in, that's the receipts, and all the things it plans to spend money on, the expenditures, over the next fiscal year, which runs from April 1st to March 31st.
Now, to really get a grip on this, you got to know that the budget isn't just one big pile of money. It's actually split into two main parts. The best way to think about it is like that national wallet has two separate pockets, and each one is for a totally different kind of money.
Okay, so on one side, you've got the revenue budget. This is like your family's checking account for day-to-day stuff. It's for all the operational recurring costs, things like paying government salaries, covering subsidies, making interest payments on old debts. It's literally the money for keeping the lights on. Then on the other side, you have the capital budget. This is more like your family's investment portfolio or your mortgage. It deals with the big, long-term stuff, things that either create an asset, like building a brand new airport, or change your debt, like taking out a huge international loan.
All right, let's get to the juicy part, the government's income. Where does all this money actually come from? How does that national wallet get filled up in the first place? Let's follow the money trail.
So surprise, surprise, the income, or receipts as they're officially called, is split into those same two categories we just talked about. First, you've got revenue receipts. This is the government's regular, non-returnable income. It's money that comes in and doesn't create any debt. Think taxes. Then you have capital receipts. This is different. This is money that comes in but either creates a liability, like a loan you have to pay back, or comes from selling something the government already owns.
So let's drill down a little into revenue receipts. It's mostly broken into two streams. You've got tax revenue. This is the big one, the main engine. It's exactly what it sounds like. Income tax, the taxes companies pay, GST, customs duties on imported goods, all that stuff. And then you have non-tax revenue. This is money the government makes in other ways, like earning interest on loans it's given out, or pocketing the profits from companies it owns, or charging fees for certain services. Okay, now for capital receipts. Remember, this isn't your regular paycheck-style income. This is money that comes from borrowing, taking out loans from the public, from other countries, even from its own central bank. It also includes getting paid back on loans the government made a while ago. And then there's this word you hear a lot, disinvestment. That's really just a fancy way of saying the government is selling off some of its shares in public companies to raise cash. So you can see, this is more about shuffling assets and liabilities around, not earning new money.
Okay, so we've covered the money in part of the equation. Now it's time to flip the coin and look at the money out. Where does it all go? And you guessed it, the spending side looks very familiar. It's split the same way. Revenue expenditure is all that day-to-day spending we talked about. Salaries for public employees, subsidies, interest payments. It doesn't build any new assets. On the other hand, capital expenditure is the investment part. This is the money that's spent to create assets that will hopefully benefit the country for years to come. We're talking building new roads, ports, schools, buying heavy machinery. You get the idea.
All right, so we've looked at all the money coming in and all the money going out. Now it's time for the moment of truth. You add it all up, and the budget's bottom line can end up in one of three possible states. First up, you could have a surplus budget. This is pretty simple. Income is greater than spending. The government brought in more money than it spent. This basically means it's pulling money out of the economy, which can be a good way to hit the brakes if things are getting too heated and inflation is becoming a problem.
And next possibility, a balanced budget. Receipts are equal to expenditures. Money in equals money out. Pretty straightforward, right? This is usually seen as being financially stable, but it doesn't really give the economy a push or a pull in either direction. It's neutral.
And the third and most common outcome is a deficit budget. This is when spending is greater than income. The government spent more money than it brought in. Now, this might sound bad, but it's often done on purpose, especially during a slowdown or a recession. The idea is to pump extra money into the economy to get things moving again and help create jobs.
Okay, of those three, the word you hear thrown around constantly in the news is deficit. The budget deficit, the fiscal deficit. So why does this one particular number get all the headlines? Why does it matter so much? Let's decode it.
Well, first off, there are actually a few different types of deficit, and they each tell a different story. The revenue deficit means your day-to-day spending is higher than your day-to-day income. That's kind of like living off your credit card just to pay for groceries. Not sustainable. Then you have the fiscal deficit. This is the big kahuna. It tells you the grand total of money the government has to borrow this year to cover all its expenses. And finally, there's the primary deficit. This one takes the fiscal deficit and subtracts the interest payments on all debt. It shows you how much you're borrowing just to fund this year's programs, not to pay for the past.
And a large fiscal deficit, well, that has some pretty serious implications. It's a clear signal that the government needs to borrow a whole lot of money. And all that borrowing can kick off a dangerous chain reaction. It can push up inflation, and it might even be a sign that government spending is getting a bit, well, wasteful. But the biggest danger? It can lead to something called a debt trap. This is where it gets really serious. As our source material puts it, this can lead to more borrowings and more interest payments by the government to repay old loans. And that is known as a debt trap. Think about that. It's a vicious cycle where you have to take out new loans just to pay the interest on your old loans. You're not even paying down the original debt anymore. You're just borrowing to stay afloat. It's a really tough spot for any country to be in. So when you strip it all down, a budget is so much more than a spreadsheet with a bunch of numbers. It's a moral document. It's a statement of our national priorities. Where the money goes tells you exactly what we as a country value most. Is it building new infrastructure? Is it healthcare? Is it defense? It's all right there in the numbers shaping our future. So the real question is, what does our budget say about who we are?